Oh man, I'm so excited for this episode for so many reasons. We got a first time clash between two NorCal teams in the NBA playoffs, but that's not the reason I'm excited. It's because of the other person on the other half of the screen. And this is someone who was born in Northern California, whose talent and passion for performing led him all over the country. We're talking about Morehouse College in Atlanta, all the way to Hollywood, then a little bit of reality TV. We're talking a pivot to journalism in Arkansas and then Texas and now Sacramento. And he is currently the sports anchor at ABC10. So I am pleased to welcome the always enthusiastic and highly talented Kevin John. Welcome, man.
Greg, I just hope I can live up to that amazing introduction you just gave me right there. I mean, that was epic. Good night, ladies and gentlemen. Wow, that's one of the best introductions I've ever received, Greg. You have to promise me, man, if I ever die prematurely, you have to give my eulogy because that was amazing right there, brother.
I will agree to that, but let's hope it never comes to that. I'll leave it at that one. So, no, I absolutely. I'm trying to make like a living off of good introductions, and this was a really easy one for me to do. And like, just to pull the curtain back for the viewers and listeners, I've only met Kevin in person just a couple of times, but seeing how generous he's been with his time and always willing to speak with somebody like me, I had no problem asking him to join the show. We're super lucky to have him. I want to give a brief shout out to our mutual friend and coworker, Luca Serio, for making the connection possible. He's a great kid. And here we are to talk about the Warriors and the Kings mostly. So like it's a year of firsts when we're talking about basketball right now. This is the first time these two teams are facing each other in the postseason. It's the first time that both teams have had a winning record, if you can believe it. And it is officially, as of last night, the first time that all four California teams have made the playoffs since sharing statehood. So talk about the California love. And Kevin, before we get into the Kings as a team specifically, I know from working at a local news station, pro sports is not always the main focus, even if that's what a lot of your viewers are going to focus on because of the type of coverage it gets nationally. You've done a lot of great work locally, whether that be with the local sports or just other local stories in general. I know you've been in Sacramento for a few years now. Tell me how this Kings season and the beam and the success has just created this different kind of energy in the community of Sacramento.
You know, it's real funny that you say that. Exactly 1 year ago, Greg, I was in meetings with our producers in management at work, specifically management, and they were essentially telling us, Kevin, we don't want as much Kings coverage. You know, people can find out Kings coverage on their phone and stuff like that. We want more local stories. We want more feature stories, more local stories. Stay away from the Kings stuff. Literally, yesterday, I come into work and my producer's like, Kevin, all we want is Kings in the sportscast. We don't want anything else. We just want Kings, Kings, Kings. So it's funny, not only what a difference a year makes, but when you have a winning franchise, how all of a sudden everybody wants a dose of that. And everybody cannot get enough of Kings coverage when literally just a year ago, they were telling us, cut back. No one cares. We don't want that. Focus on other local stories. Now it's like, all we want is Kings. Kings Warriors preview, this, that, and other. And I totally understand. I mean, part of it is because game one is on our network, which is ABC. So of course we want to promote that. But the main thing is that when you have a winning franchise in Sacramento, which is something this city has not seen with the Sacramento Kings in 16 seasons and 17 years, then all of a sudden you have an unquenchable thirst to receive more of that information. So me as as you described, Greg, and you so beautifully illustrated, as a local sportscaster here, it's just night and day on what my coverage is now versus what my coverage was last year at the same exact time. And it's good that the Kings are good because when teams are good, people care, people watch, people tune in. And any of the Kings local podcasters will tell you that their ratings, like for example, my partner in my sports department, Matt George, he does Locked On Kings podcast. His numbers have been significantly higher during this winning season. So yes, when you have a winning franchise, people are interested. People tune in. It's like the old quote, if you build it, they will come. Well, the Kings built a winning franchise and now people are coming all out of the woodworks. You have bandwagon fans that are coming. So, it's just amazing to see the transformation of this basketball team and the impact and effect that it's had on fans, both diehard and casual fans, and for us local sportscasters, how it's been amazing that we can actually focus on our lone professional team here and give them the coverage that they definitely deserve.
I'm never a fan of super expensive tickets for the most part, but the fact that Golden One tickets for the playoffs are coming in at more expensive than the Chase Center is awesome. And I'm not saying that I don't want people to be able to access the game, but just the fact that the demand is so high for a city that has been thirsting for 17 years for this opportunity, and they got in as a 3 seed. I mean, I remember thinking around November when the Kings started thinking, okay, they look a little more put together. They look competitive. Hopefully they can get in the play-in. That was not a problem at all. I mean, the teams that were in danger of the play-in are the powerhouses that everybody expected. The Warriors, the Clippers, the Lakers had to be in the play-in, and they barely scraped by last night. People even thought the Timberwolves, after the Gobert trade, and I'm not saying everybody, but there was a crowd that thought this was going to be a top 3 team in the West. And the Kings came out of nowhere and climbed up the ladder, and they have very much earned that 48-win season and the 3 seed. So I want to touch on this Golden One environment because that's a place that you know quite well, and you've worked some long hours spending time at the Golden One Center. The Warriors on the road this year are horrendous. They were 11-30, and the last 2 road victories came against teams that were resting their best players, including the Kings. So even though this is like an hour and a half drive away for a lot of these fans, do you expect a crowd of a lot of purple and white?
Well, I'll tell you this, Greg. I was at Golden One Center just on Friday when the Warriors came to town and faced the Kings. Granted, it was a game where the Kings were resting 3 of their starters. But, Greg, while being at Golden One Center with the Warriors in town, there were several times throughout that game I had to look around and make sure it was Golden One Center and not Chase Center because, my goodness, those fans were so loud for the Golden State Warriors. They were so loud. Steph makes a 3, they erupt. Clay makes a 3, they erupt. And just not just the hearing all of this, but visually looking around and seeing all the blue and yellow jerseys, it was like the Warriors takeover inside of Golden One Center. And I get it. Part of the reason is you have a lot of people in Sacramento who are Bay Area transplants. It's expensive as heck to live in the Bay Area. So you have a lot of people who move closer to the Sacramento area, whether that's Vacaville, whether that's Fairfield, whether that's Sacramento. And you have a lot of people who move out here from the Bay. So I get the fact that, yes, there are a lot of fans here, just in general. If you look at the 209, because I'm from Stockton initially, if you look at the 209, not just Stockton, but Manteca, Modesto, Stanislaus County, you have a lot of Warriors fans out in that area, a lot of Bay Area fans, Tracy. So you have a lot of Warriors fans in this market, just to be honest. And then, of course, you have a lot of Warriors fans who are here just because the Warriors have been so great. If you look over the last, 7 years or 8 years since they started their little dynasty, you have a lot of you have a lot of younger people who, growing up, the Kings were garbage here, so they took a liking to the next Northern California team, or the Golden State Warriors. So I'm saying that to say there's a number of reasons why there's so many Golden State Warriors fans in the Sacramento area. But it was if I'm a Kings fan, it was very disheartening to watch what I did to witness what I did on Friday, and just to hear how loud the Warriors fans were here. They were taking over Golden One Center. So, yes, the Warriors have been absolutely trash on the road this season. There was one point when the Warriors were like 7-30 on the road. I want to say shortly after the All-Star break or something like that. They've been atrocious on the road this season, but I don't think their road record or their lack of road success is really going to play a factor in this series because, first of all, they only have to travel an hour for this game. So geographically, it's not really a road game. And then you're going to have a ton of Warriors fans in there. So that's not really a road game to them anyway. So I don't think their road record is really going to come into play in this series because for them, it's going to feel kind of like an extension of a home game.
Yeah, and I think Draymond Green, when he talked about this on his podcast a couple of weeks back, he said he wouldn't mind playing Sacramento in the first round, and that was not to disrespect the Kings by any means, but he talked about the travel and what they went through last year, going from Bay Area to Denver, then you have Memphis, then you have Dallas, and then Boston. Those are all a lot of long journeys. They can spend most nights in their own bed. I mean, maybe if there's just one day break between games in Sacramento, maybe they stay up there. But for the most part, it's an advantage for them, and it's an advantage for the Kings as well. I mean, it goes both ways on the travel front, and we'll see how that impacts both teams. I think generally speaking, younger teams travel better. The Kings have a little bit of a younger core, so it's not going to take as much of a toll. So maybe in that sense, it is more of a benefit to the Warriors, but you could also flip the coin and say maybe it's just not that big a deal for the Kings either way, and they'll be fresh the whole way through. I want to ask one question about something that is very, very important, and that is a four-letter word known as beam. Did you know going into the season that the beam was going to be a thing after this year? Because I didn't even know about it until like early November.
Yeah, to be honest, I had no idea. The Kings front office did a wonderful job at keeping that beam a secret because I had no idea. Even it wasn't until I think it was Halloween, the first night that it was up in the sky, or maybe it was the game right before that. I can't remember, but I just remember even we were all in the newsroom like, what the heck is that? Like nobody knew, and I think in a good way that was good because it brought the mystery, it brought the excitement. I think it elevated all of that for the simple fact that the beam, no one knew what this beam kind of thing was. So I think it really played in well to the King fan base. But man, Greg, I'll tell you, just seeing that the way the beam has electrified and amplified this fan base and these victories that the Kings get has been amazing. You know, this is the thing with Sacramento, as we both know, it's a small market team compared to the NBA. It's a small market, and that's a gift and a curse. It's a gift because with most small market teams, you have a lot of fandom behind them because that's all they have. In Oklahoma City, all you have is Thunder. In San Antonio, you have the Spurs. You know, so when you look at some of these small market teams, it's good because your whole fan base, your whole city, your whole town can rally behind that specific team. Whereas if you have a team like, you know, the Lakers or, you know, the Knicks, you know, when you're in bigger cities, there's a million other things to do, literally. So that's where you see a lot of bandwagon fans. And I'm not specifically calling out the Lakers or New York Knicks fan bases or anything, but in bigger markets, you just have bandwagon fans because that's the trendy thing to do in that city where there's so many other things to do. Matter of fact, I can call out Lakers fans. I lived in LA for 11 years. You're damn right. You do have a small percentage of diehard fans who will be there through thick and thin. But in big cities, you have fans show up if it's the trendy thing to do. If that's important, let me show up and be seen. The thing I like about small market teams like the Sacramento Kings is that it's not like there's 50 million other things to do in Sacramento. And that's not a diss at Sacramento, but let's just be real. Sacramento is not a destination city. People come to Sacramento because, oh, great, Tahoe is just 2 hours away. Oh, the Bay Area is just 2 hours away. Oh, Yosemite is just 3 hours south. So, you know, it's in great proximity to a lot of places. But Sacramento itself, I wouldn't say is a destination town. That's not a knock at Sacramento. I love Sacramento. I've lived there for 4 years. I think it's a great city. Honestly, I feel it's a hidden gem in Northern California. But just from a destination or a touristy perspective, I understand nobody is saying, hey, kids, let's travel to Sacramento for spring break and we're going to spend our spring break in Sacramento. No, you know, I'm just being realistic. But the thing about this city in Sacramento is that it will rally behind its team if it's good. I've covered the Sacramento Kings for the last 4 years, and I can tell you they had sellout crowds even when the team was doing terrible. Like, you had a fan base who is thirsty for this team, obviously thirsty for good basketball, but that's one of the benefits in being in a small town. Now, obviously, there's a lot of cons to being a small market team. You don't get a lot of recognition, specifically on the national scale. You know that the Kings had 0 nationally televised games last season. This season, they only had 2 games on TNT. 2 games. I think they had a couple of more on NBA TV, but they were never respected nationally. So that's one of the drawbacks to being a small market team. But I say that all to say this and get back to your question, Greg, about the beam. I think the beam was a genius idea because not only with the Kings playing well, obviously if you play well, you're always going to get publicity. You just are. It doesn't matter how small your market is. If you're playing really good, people are going to take notice. But the beam was something that I feel was perfect to have to merge in with this first season in 16, 17 years where the Kings were having success. To have that in there is just something else that I feel really magnified the success of the Kings and put the Kings on notice nationwide, especially here in Sacramento. And now you got all these nicknames, the Beam Team, Light the Beam, all this other stuff. I feel that it was genius marketing. So shout out to Vivek and Monty McNair and everybody in the front office who came up with this incredible idea, because that beam is shining bright. And boy, Greg, I'm going to tell you, there's nothing more that Kings fans would love to shine that beam in this series against the Golden State Warriors.
I have no doubt about that. And I want to give 2 points in response to that awesome answer you just gave. The first one is about the fandom of the Sacramento Kings. So I grew up in the Bay Area and moved when I was about 6 years old. So that was just enough time for me to be conscious enough to be a Warriors fan before moving to Davis, which is right outside of Sacramento. So most of my friends that I grew up with are Kings fans, and I just want to say that they are awesome. They have done a great job of supporting this franchise for the entire time that we've been friends. They are not obnoxious about it now. They were never too pouty about it when they were going through a playoff drought. So they have really earned this. I know they're really trying to get to a playoff game, so I'm hoping that works out for them. And they've been great. I have nothing negative to say about the Kings, and along with all the lack of national attention, I really want to try to amplify this team and make people understand the fact that, hey, I know Steph Curry has been getting national attention for a decade, and deservedly so, but that doesn't mean that the Kings are just a team that's going to get walked over in this series. And your colleague, Matt George, on Locked On Kings, I think has done a great job of providing that perspective as well, obviously from a bit of a homer standpoint, but not an unrealistic homer. I think it's a very balanced perspective and one that deserves to have a light shown on it. In terms of the beam, I was having a conversation this last week with Brian Murphy, who's a longtime host on KNBR in San Francisco, and he's a proud UCLA Bruin. And as you know this, there were March Madness games that were played at the Golden One Center, and so he took his kid to go and watch UCLA play one of those first 2 games in the first weekend. And they lit the beam because I think the Kings had won a road game. And he's saying how his teenage son is like, oh my gosh, it's the beam, and wants to take a picture of it and treating it like it was some big celebrity. Because I think even beyond just Sacramento Kings fandom, it's just become this phenom and a great marketing standpoint. And the fact that it coincided with the Kings breaking that playoff drought and finally bringing some excitement to the city, I think was the perfect intersection. And I've only seen the beam once from afar. I have yet to go and witness it at Golden One, so I can't wait for the first time I get to do that one as well. But they are the
You
beam
need to get
team.
down there and check it out, Greg. You got to check it out.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to be one of those things. It's like the Grand Canyon, you know, like you see pictures of it and you're like, oh, that's cool. But in person, it is a whole different deal that you can't describe. That's kind of what I'm thinking of it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a spectacle.
Oh, yeah. Let's see. So just back to this series, I'm going to throw off a bunch of King stats and just to get people to realize, hey, this team is not a joke. Everybody knows that the Golden State Warriors have crazy upsides. Like, they've won 4 championships for a reason. Nobody needs to go out on a limb and talk about why the Warriors are poised to possibly make another run. But for the Kings, individually and as a team, they've done a lot of awesome things. De'Aaron Fox, 547 fourth quarter points this season, which is second to Kyrie Irving. Domantas Sabonis led the league in rebounds per game at over 12, and total rebounds, 973. Keegan Murray, rookie draft pick. A lot of people were saying, oh, they let Jaden Ivey slip. Guess what? Keegan Murray started, and he set the record for most threes made by a rookie, which was 206. The Kings have the third, they got top five, tied for top five, third quarter scoring margin at plus 1.3. They are top five in fourth quarter scoring margin at plus 1.1. They have the second best road record in the league, only to the Milwaukee Bucks. They are the only team in the Western Conference with a winning record on the road, and they are 9 games over 500, so it's not even close. They have a winning record at 8-7 on no rest back-to-backs. They are 4-1 in overtime games. They were 16-9 after the All-Star break, which is a time when a lot of their critics thought they might slip. That was good for the 6th best record in the league over that stretch. And they are so good at responding to bumps on the road. 20-13 record, both straight up and against the spread when coming off a loss. So Mike Brown has done an incredible job of having his guys ready. He is hands down the coach of the year for the complete season he has had. So that's just kind of my mini little Kings rant I want to give, just to give people a little perspective on what they might have missed if they haven't been able to watch their games locally. Now, back to you. Just as a journalist and a sportscaster, there's a lot of great storylines within this NorCal Clash series. Just from a professional perspective, what is it that you're looking forward to the most about Warriors Kings?
Well, first of all, I'm impressed with all those statistics that you were able to look up there, Greg. It shows you definitely did your homework, especially for all those number guys and analytic guys out there. And I definitely respect that. And I'm glad that you gave those numbers, because that contextualizes what this season has been about for the Sacramento Kings. And there's a lot of validity and respect that should be associated with those numbers. However, and this is something I told Matt George, because I was on Matt's podcast a few days ago, and he's a big numbers guy like that as well. And I appreciate that, because for a lot of people who don't pay attention to the Sacramento Kings, you see that this team is no joke, and you see what the numbers represent. Everyone thought the Kings were going to hit a cliff and fall off after the All-Star break. 16-9 record doesn't sound like falling off.
And the last 2 games, they were resting.
Yeah, exactly. And keep that in mind. So, and having the second best road record to the Milwaukee Bucks, who I think very well could be at the end of the season could be holding the Larry O'Brien trophy, I think is a darn good thing. You have to play well on the road if you want to win in the NBA. Here's my only thing. While I do love numbers and paying attention to that, regular season numbers and postseason numbers are always different. And I say that because you have to realize matchups also throughout the regular season. You have players, teams sitting out. Like, for example, Matt was, he brought up some number where he was like, well, the Kings against Western Conference teams, their defense is, I don't know, top 5 or something that he, some number that he brought up. And I was like, that's respectable. But, in some of these games during the regular season, like, when you guys were taking on Minnesota, they didn't have Cat. When you were taking on the Clippers a couple of weeks ago, they didn't have Kawhi Leonard, who's one of the greatest defenders in the league. So, come postseason, things are always different, and teams play different. Teams match up differently in the postseason. So I think that while the numbers are great and contextualize what the team has been able to do during the regular season, I feel that sometimes that can also be a curse looking at numbers entering the postseason. Let me explain. The Golden State Warriors. Remember last year, the Golden State Warriors were a 3rd seed out of the West. Nobody really had the Golden State Warriors doing that much in the playoffs. And that's because of their season. Remember leading up to the season, I think it was around January or December of last year, but they were flirting with 500, if I'm not mistaken. Even this year, this season, when it was around December or somewhere around there, they were flirting around the 500. I even think they were below 500 for a particular point in time. Now, obviously, the Golden State Warriors have the ability to turn it on when they need to. And I think if last year's postseason has taught us anything, it's that the Golden State Warriors can turn it on and look every bit like those champions that we've seen in 2015, 2017, 2018. They had the ability to do that. So to answer your question, what am I expecting to see from this Kings Warriors series? First of all, I'm expecting to see a whole lot of trash talking. Oh my goodness. If you've been on Twitter ever since Sunday when it was announced that the Kings and Warriors were going to meet up, wow, there has been no shortage of and I'm talking emphatic trash talking, vehement trash talking, intense trash talking. It has been going on. I was watching 95.7 this morning, or shall I say a clip actually, earlier. And I was like, my goodness, the amount of trash talking and the amount of disrespect from Warriors fans coming into this game is unheard of. Great. But let's look at something else. You know that coming in to this series, the Warriors are under 300 favorites on taking this, which means the Kings only have, I think, like a 20% chance or something. And this is according to PointsBet, which is one of those, betting things. And, I'm not a betting man, so a lot of times I don't pay attention to those spreads, over-unders, all that stuff. But you know that this is the biggest spread for a team, a third seed going against a sixth seed in 33 years. I think 1990 was the last time there's been that big of a spread, or that big when I say that a third seed has been that big of an underdog going into a series. So there is absolutely no respect given to the Kings coming into this series. And I get it. As the Kings, you've been out of the playoffs the last 16 seasons. You haven't won anything, notable since the last time you hung up, a division banner, which was 2003. The Golden State Warriors are the defending champions. The Golden State Warriors have the championship pedigree. The Golden State Warriors have been there before. They have the experience, the intangibles, the athletes, the greatest shooting backcourt of all time. I get it. And I'm not saying that it's foolish for people to think that the Golden State Warriors are going to win this series handily. And when I say handily, winning it in 5 games, or even I've heard people saying sweeps. It's not going to be a sweep. Let me tell you that. It's not going to be a sweep. But the amount of disrespect the Kings are dealing with coming into this series is unfathomable. And honestly, I almost feel reprehensible that they have to deal with this amount of disrespect coming into the series, which is why I'm glad that you put up those numbers, Greg, and showed those numbers to show, look, this is not some Kings team who just got into the third seed, that just got lucky and got into the third seed. This is a Kings team who has the top offense, historically the best offense in the history of the NBA as far as points per game. We've never seen that before. That's unprecedented. Now, granted, there are a lot of teams right behind them, give or take a point, so it is what it is. But this is also a team who has played exceptionally well on the road. This is a team who has shot the 3 ball exceptionally well this year. Keegan Murray, Kevin Huerter, first set of Kings teammates to have 200 plus 3-pointers in however long or whatever that statistic is. So you have a Kings team who is good. The only vulnerability that I'll say about this Kings team, and I think the Golden State Warriors will exploit that, is defense. This has been a bottom 10 defensive team for the Kings this year. They have not been great defensively this year. And that is a vulnerability that other teams are going to exploit. Another thing, Kings don't have length and size that some of these other teams do have. The Bucks, now granted the Bucks are in the Eastern Conference, but even a team like Minnesota, they came in here, what was that, about 2 weeks ago, and were able to beat the Kings just off of their size and length. So I feel that's another disadvantage. So it's good to see Mike Brown inserting Alex Len these last, 5-10 games, getting him in there, because the Kings do not have that. So there are a lot of vulnerabilities that the Kings have coming into this Golden State Warriors series, the first round of the playoffs here. But with that being said, don't expect the Kings to bow down. Now, I'll be honest, Greg, and I've been on the record to say I do think the Warriors will win this series. They're not going to come in here and sweep the Kings. They're not going to come in here and win this series in 5. The series is going to go 6 or 7 games. That's how talented the Warriors are. How talented the Kings are. But I do feel the Warriors are going to win this series just because of experience, because of championship pedigree, because of all the weapons that they have. But don't think the Kings are just going to bow down and let that happen. That's what I'm going to say. The Kings are going to fight this. And I would not be shocked. And Greg, I hope I'm wrong that somehow the Kings pull off the upset in this series and pull off this historic underdog, a seed that they have coming into this game. I hope they prove me wrong, and I hope they prove everyone wrong, because I think the Kings have what it takes. So I will not be shocked if the Kings pull off an upset. But I still have Golden State taking the series.
As hard as I've rooted for the Warriors for pretty much my whole life, I will say if it gets to 2-2 or even a very tense 2-1 or like a 3-1, but it still feels really even or a little skewed, that is so good for basketball. I think that is incredible for basketball. That is incredible for the Kings. That is incredible for Northern California. That is incredible for small market teams. And just incredible for the parity of the league overall, because that's what we are seeing. I mean, I think the Kings won 48 games and they got the 3rd seed. And it is true that in a lot of years, winning 48 games might not have been enough to win the 3rd seed. Maybe you'd get the 5 or the 6 in your conference, but that doesn't matter because every year is different. Now, I am glad you bring up the fact that playoff basketball is different, right? Like, I don't say all those numbers on the Kings to spew it out as if it is some kind of law or like, hey, this is exactly what's going to happen. But the context is key because you're right. Playoffs, it's different. And I think that that's a lot of times we see the boys become men, and that's a lot of times that we get our first look at players that you think are going to be rising stars in this league. I mean, Draymond Green, when he was younger, I think the first time I realized he was going to be good was when he started breaking out in the playoffs. Tyrese Maxey did it last year for the 76ers. Gosh, time goes fast. Gary Payton II, another guy that last year during the Warriors run kind of flourished. Jordan Poole had his moments where, and yes, he does drive me crazy sometimes. But the list can go on. The list can go on of guys that have elevated their game to a different level in the playoffs. And for the Kings, we just don't know. We know that De'Aaron Fox is clutch. We know that Domantas Sabonis was climbing the MVP ladder and entering like that top 5 conversation by the end of the year, which is awesome. But we don't really know how a lot of these guys will play in the playoffs. And I don't know how many of their core really has playoff experience. I mean, Kevin Huerter did with the Hawks, but for the most part, this is a group where it's going to be pretty new to them. I don't think that the Pacers, I mean, maybe they had a playoff series with Sabonis. He might have been on the team that got swept in the bubble, but like that doesn't count. So it's new. There's a lot to learn. And I was going to ask you for your prediction, actually, but you gave it to me already with a possible 6 or 7 games. So you beat me to the punch. Now, I'll shift my question, though, to Game 1 is happening Saturday evening in Golden 1. It's going to be awesome. Do you have a prediction for Game 1 specifically?
That's a really good question. That is a really, really, really good question. And I was talking to somebody, because you know what the over-under is on, I think it's 9, the Warriors. If you're betting, it's a 9. I think they're favored by 9, if I'm not mistaken, which is ridiculous. But I honestly feel that I think the Warriors are going to win Game 1, and let me explain why. The Kings have every reason to feel confident about Game 1. They have home court advantage. It's their first playoff game in 17 years, 16 seasons. The fans are going to be insane. They've been able to rest. They've had some great practices this week. They have every reason to feel confident about Game 1. I think the reason why the Warriors are going to win Game 1 is they know that if they let the Kings win Game 1, that will do a lot for the Kings' confidence. That will do a lot for their fans' confidence. And the Warriors know that they will find themselves in trouble the rest of the series if they let the Kings come out and win game one, because that would set the tone. So I think the Warriors, with their experience, I think they are going to win game one, just because they want to send a message to the Sacramento Kings that, like, look, we know we're your NorCal rivals, but we're still big brother and you're little brother, and let's make that clear. And you guys think our road record sucks. We're going to show you we can come on the road and beat you. So I feel that the Warriors have every incentive to win game one. I would not be shocked if the Kings did win it. I would not be shocked. And I'll even say that afterward. The Kings have every reason to come out and win. I just feel the Warriors are going to win game one because they don't want to give the Kings any bit of hope to think that they can win this series. And obviously the Kings are underdogs coming into the series. And the thing is, the Warriors have been there before. So let's just say, for example, Greg, let's just say the Kings win both of their games on home court, game one and game two. The Warriors aren't going to panic. The Warriors have been down 3-1 in a series before and came back and won. The Warriors are not going to panic. If the Kings go down 0-2, then they will panic for the lack of experience. The only person on that roster who's won a championship are actually two people, Matthew Dellavedova and Harrison Barnes, who obviously won a championship with the Golden State Warriors back in 2015, I believe. So the Warriors are not going to panic if they get down. The Kings are. But the Warriors have so much more pressure on them this series than the Sacramento Kings do. The Warriors have all the pressure on them, which is insane, them being a 6 seed, but they have all the pressure on them. The Kings have no pressure. So the Kings can use that to their advantage. Like, no one's expecting the Kings to win this series. Better yet, win it in 5 games or even 6 games. A lot of people say if the Kings are winning, it's going to have to go 7 games with their home court advantage. I do feel that the Kings can basically, I'm not saying the Kings are going to come and coast into the series. The Kings are looking to win, but they don't have any pressure on them. The pressure is on Golden State. And because all that pressure is on Golden State, I think that's more of a reason why they're going to come out and win game one, to send that message and say, look, we're still bigger brother. We know the Kings are the 3rd seed. We know the Kings have home court advantage. We know the Kings have historically the best offense we've ever seen. I know a lot of people are counting the Kings out and they're good, but we're going to come in here and show them who Big Brother is. So I think that Golden State is going to win game one, but I would not be shocked if the Kings did. I would not be shocked if the Kings did. I hope I'm wrong. I truly hope I'm wrong. But just listening to Golden State leading up to this, you talked about Draymond Green on his podcast. On that podcast, Draymond Green was licking his chops, hoping he would get Sacramento in the first round. For one, so they don't have to travel far. And for two, because he thinks that's an opponent. You know, Greg, how many teams were hoping they would fall in that 6 seed so they would get Sacramento in the first round? The LA Clippers were hoping they'd fall in that 6 seed. The New Orleans Pelicans were hoping they'd get that 6 seed. Of course, the Golden State Warriors are hoping the 6 seed. The Los Angeles Lakers were hoping for that 6 seed, which obviously they didn't get it with them winning last night. They had the 7 seed, but there were so many teams hoping for that 6 seed so they can go against the Sacramento Kings because they feel the Sacramento Kings are vulnerable. I don't think they're vulnerable. Greg, you don't think they're vulnerable because we've actually watched the Kings all throughout this year. You beautifully illustrated those statistics on what the Sacramento Kings team has put together this year. So we know they ain't no punks. But for everyone else, they do think the Kings are punks. And they do think the Kings are vulnerable, which is why they want them in that 6 seed. But I still think Golden State is going to win this series and likely take game one.
I like that line of thinking a lot. And by the way, just to go back to my Kings' lack of playoff experience, I don't know how I forgot about Harrison Barnes. Like, he played on the own team I was rooting for. So I'm sure a bunch of people back when they were listening to that are probably like, how are you missing that, dude? Like, what a casual. But that's beside the point. I will say this, though. For game one, I would lean toward the Warriors. And I think that if they win game one, I think the Kings are in strong position to go and defend their home court for game two.
Oh, yeah.
But I will say this. if the Kings win game one, I'm not so sure it's a surefire bet for the Warriors to just automatically rebound and win that 2-2. They might have to go back home and win a pair of games to even it up. So I'm not going to go too deep down the rabbit hole of predictions because I want to see what we get on Saturday. But if the Kings win game one, for me, that's not just an automatic, like, okay, well, now the Warriors are going to respond and trade back. I think if the Warriors win game one, the Kings are in good position to equalize the series, knowing they have to go on the road. But could the Kings be up 2-0? Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. No, that could happen. In my book, what I'm thinking is that the Kings are going to lose game one. They're going to win game two on their home court. And I think they would win game three, their first game in Chase, or the first game of the series in Chase. So I could honestly see the Kings up 2-1, 3 games into the series. Whether if they win their first 2 games at home and lose game 3, or in my prediction, if they lose game 1 and then win the next couple of games. I can very well see the Kings up 2-1, 3 games into this series. I don't think that would be a shock at all. But I do feel that Golden State, even down 2-1, they're not going to panic. They know who they are. They know the makeup of that team. They know they're the defending champs. They know they have everyone healthy coming into this. Now, granted, Andrew Wiggins, I think that's the only questionable mark because he hasn't been with the team, the last 20 games or something like that. And they have to get him back in the mode. So Andrew Wiggins is the only question mark. But this is a darn good team, and they can at any point turn it on. You saw them score, 55 points in the first quarter of their game on Sunday. Now, granted, it was against a Portland team who was resting everybody, but this is a team that, my goodness, can turn it on at any given time. So if you're the Kings, the only chance you have in this series is to go up 2-1 or pray you can go up 3-1. Because once those Warriors get going, they taste blood, and godly, they're just so hard to stop, so hard to stop. So I can see the Kings going up 2-1 early on in the series, but can you hang on to it is the question. Because this is a Golden State Warriors team who can, at any given point, turn it on at any given point, and it's incredible watching this team play. I remember, I think it was this was last season. Was it game 1 in their opening series against Denver? They fell down at like 10 or 15, I want to say in the second or third quarter, and they just came out and just turned it on like we haven't seen before. So, this is just a team, they're never out, especially when you have the best three-point shooting backboard of all time. An 8-point lead against the Warriors can evaporate in a matter of 40 seconds. It just really can. No lead is ever safe against this team. So while I would like to see the Kings jump out to a 2-1 lead, they absolutely have to take one of the 2 games at home. Absolutely. If they don't win one of the 2 games at home, they're in trouble. Serious trouble.
I can't wait. We got playoff basketball beginning Saturday. The play-in games, or the 9-10s, play later today, and then we got the losers of last night facing off against the winners of these. By the time this episode comes up, we'll probably have our series already set, but we will get this up in time for game 1, and I can't wait for it. And this is, by the way, Kevin John. You can follow him on Twitter at @HeyKevinJohn. Just a nice, easy name. So why not go do it? Just click that button. It's easy. And I will let you save your voice for like your real job and real sports casting. But thank you so much for coming on and your time. This was a killer discussion. As always, it felt effortless, and we'll have to do it again. But I seriously do appreciate it. You are awesome.
Greg, I can say the same thing about you, sir. Since meeting you several months ago, man, I've been really impressed with your work ethic, your tenacity, your sports knowledge, and everything that you're doing, man. You're a true inspiration. Keep working hard. Keep shining your light, buddy. I'm so proud of you. And I look forward to the day I can say, man, I knew Greg Silver back when, and to see you taking over. So proud of you. And also, before I go,
Thank
Greg,
you.
did I get your prediction for this series?
Oh, you did not. And I'm gonna say I know everybody every time there's a series prediction, like 6 games is the generic thing. I will take the Warriors in 6, but because it's the perfect balance between the Kings are absolutely capable of giving them trouble, but if the Warriors are to close this one out and they have a 3-2 lead going back to the Chase Center for game 6, they know they have to get that done. So, as far as I'm concerned, if they have a closeout opportunity at home, that is a must win for them. And for that reason, I will take the Warriors in 6. But if it goes to a 7th in Golden 1, that would be awesome.
Woo! That place. First of all, you talked about those ticket prices earlier. The ticket prices for Game 7 would probably exceed what they are from Game 1. I mean, good God, they start off at around 600, 700. But I agree with you. If this does go Game 7, grab your popcorn. Thank you, basketball gods, if this goes Game 7, because that would just be a fitting end to this series, this rivalry, and everything else. So it'll definitely be interesting. But Greg, I actually have Warriors in 6 as well. So we'll see if that happens. But man, if it goes to a Game 7, I will not be mad. I will be elated. So
no, and Matt George had Kings in 7 as his prediction. So I mean, maybe it will, and maybe he gets his wish too. So anything could happen. We got like the first round series are just so great, and it's usually not like this. So but yeah, like this is what it's about. This is playoff basketball, and we're finally here. So we got a lot of good content coming for you. Screaming from the Sidelines has officially added another member to its crew because Kevin John gave his time and did an awesome job. And for everyone listening, all the Kings fans, please like and share and subscribe. If you live near the Sacramento area, ABC10 news station is your place to see this guy's awesome face. So we're not going anywhere. We'll be back here with more episodes. But Warriors Kings, I can't wait for what's to come. And at this point, as I say to end every episode, just sit back, relax, but keep screaming.